like you, and sponsorship from community partners including Pullman Heating and Electric and Cowgirl Chocolates of Moscow. Learn more about our...
Is that the rule?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the April 11th meeting of the Administrative Committee of the Moscow City Council. On my left is John Weber. On my right, Dan Karskalen. My name is Jim Boland, and we're going to start off this meeting by approval of the minutes from the April 20 or March 28th meeting.
I suggest or move we approve them.
I would second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that motion carries. We'll approve those minutes. The second item on our agenda is a request for an authorization of a beer garden in the 2016 Moscow Renaissance Fair, and Dwight Curtis will give us the details on that.
Good afternoon. I have Luann Scott here. She's president, I believe, of the Ren Fair for this year. And, you know, as you probably know, Ren Fair's not had a beer garden in the past. But what we put together here is identical to what we do for the others that do. I've got a map. It's in your packet, but up on the screen as well of where the beer garden would be located. In the center is where the stage and restroom facilities are, so you can see where that would be located. And as far as the details, this is for April 30th and May 1st, 2 days. On April 30th, it would be from noon to 6 p.m., and on the 1st of May, it would be noon to 4 p.m. They will be using Allied Barton Security instead of having our own police officers take care of that. That has been reviewed by the police chief, and he supported that. And with that, open it up for any questions that you might have, but otherwise everything's identical to the way we do our regular business with these.
That seems very similar to Rendezvous in the Park and other things. So.
Dwight, so it's that section right there in front of the stage, basically. Is that where
the beer garden is? I'm sorry, up where the star is with the arrow.
Oh, okay.
The little yellow.
We have all our food booths up in the northwest corner there, and we're going to make it part of the food section.
Okay. My eyes aren't that great today, so appreciate
Seems like an appropriate place for it. And it'll be, you have security and everything? You got anything to say about that, John?
No, I'm fine with it.
Good?
I think it's, as long as we're doing with Ren Fair what we've done with the other events that happen there that have the beer beer garden, I think ready to go.
Great.
Yeah, I would move forward this for consent approval.
I would concur.
Will do. Thank you.
Great. Oh, I was just going to introduce our vendor. We have a representative from Rants and Raves.
Okay.
If you had any questions for him also, but
I'm sure they have the appropriate catering license to deal with the situation.
yeah.
If they don't, they can't do it. So
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luann. Thank you, Dwight. All right, in the same vein, we're moving on with the Beer and Wine Garden Resolution for Art Walk 2016. Kathleen has the details on that.
So the City Council can look at this as various vendors in businesses downtown being able to apply for permits to expand their operations for beer and wine gardens, whether it's in front of their businesses, and just doing that during the night of Art Walk, June 17th. So any business that wanted to expand their footprint to have a beer and wine area would have to go through the proper channels of the city to get this approved. So this is just to start the process.
So do you have a list of venues, Art Walk venues that are going to want to do this? Can we, are we going to have to handle this one at a time, or can we do it as a lump?
I don't know.
Good afternoon. The resolution before you is to grant authority to appropriate city staff to approve beer and wine gardens during the Art Walk event. So there may be multiple beer gardens. This is not expanding the sidewalk cafe in front of the business. That has nothing to do with this. This would actually be a separate beer and wine garden out in the public right-of-way or in the streets that it's allowed pursuant to the city code per resolution.
Mr. Reedner?
Now, really what you're doing is similar to the last agenda item, except you're granting the authority to have multiple venues. They all have to have 2 people there to control access in and out. However, security, because it's a city event, we've provided that with our own forces in the past. So that isn't part of the resolution that's before you.
John?
How about inside the various businesses? Or is this only outside?
This is referencing outside. Businesses that want to serve for like an art opening, they apply for a catering permit as well and work with the rules.
City clerk.
And they come up through city clerk and everything and fill that out.
All right. I remember I was back on the council in 2006 through 9 or whatever it was. And for a lot of those years, there was no mention made of a lot of the businesses would have wine that they served. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they even charged for it, but they did serve, a glass of wine as you went around looking at the various presentations. And then that stopped. And so I'm glad to see this starting again.
So when we just sent out our Art Walk applications to all the various businesses that have had participation in Art Walk in the past, so this year it went out to 73 businesses. And in it included notes from the clerk's office on process, and then links to different websites on permits and what the process is for serving alcohol. So we gave them the tools and the information on how to come to City Hall and what applications they need to file. So that went out with their greeting letter, their application, also for food, serving food through the health department. So everybody gets like a toolkit for Art Walk.
I think it's good.
Yeah, I think there's no reason why this can't be on the consent agenda as well.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for presenting. Thank you for your input, Rod. Okay, that's all the agenda items we have other than reports. This afternoon, we're going to hear from Tyler Palmer on the Barrier Loaner program.
You brought backup?
I brought backup. You guys don't mess with me today.
Did you bring a barrier?
With the theme of this meeting, I should have brought some beer.
And a barrier to keep other people away from it, or we could just have it.
We are beer friendly.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to take a minute. As has already been mentioned in this meeting, the groundwork's already kind of been laid for our report. The council, as you all recall, I'm sure, passed ordinance last year to allow for beer gardens in the right-of-way. It's been a successful program so far. We've had several applicants that have come through, as you've seen, and part of the intent was just to keep our downtown a vibrant place, to make sure that we can have events like Oktoberfest or concerts out in the street, things that make Moscow a destination place for people in the region, and that's been really successful. And so we're really happy about that. One of the concerns that has been voiced several times throughout this process has been the inconsistency with the way that the beer and wine gardens have been set up. It's okay. Some people it's a sawhorse. Other people it might be some rope tied between some trees. And we've been sympathetic with the fact that it's not easy to find a barrier all the time. If I'm a coffee house owner or I own a restaurant downtown, I don't have access necessarily to just a bunch of barriers to set up a beer and wine garden. And so that's something that's been a concern because it's just been inconsistent. It was brought up that we had the idea. The city owns 50 barriers that are about 8 feet long, 44 inches high, that are crowd control barriers. It's the intent of these barriers. I've got an image of them here on the screen. These barriers we've had them for several years, and they really don't get used. So the thought was that perhaps we could set up a program where we would loan these barriers out to applicants through the process. And so that's really what we're here for today, is just to get a little feedback from the committee as far as if this is something you want us to pursue, and if it is something that you're interested in, then we would work toward formalizing some of this. It would necessitate a few minor things. For example, in the ordinance currently, it stipulates that the barriers will be 48 inches tall. These barriers that we have are 44 inches tall, so it would necessitate an update to our requirement for the barriers that delineate these types of events. I've asked Tammy to come along with me today. She's going to touch a little bit on how we would operate the program and just kind of what the nuts and bolts of it would be.
Currently, we have 2 programs we spearhead. It's the litter pickup and the banner program. We put everything on a calendar. It's a first-come, first-served basis. They bring in their applications. We submit it for approval for Tyler. Block out the dates, times, whatever's needed. It's going to be similar with this one. Once we get the approved application through the process, through the city clerk, we'll get that application and do the same thing to make sure we've got the appropriate number of barriers and just go from there. The person filling out the application, the group, is going to be responsible for pickup and drop off. They're going to be inspected upon return, so they're going to be responsible for any damages or lost items. Again, first come, first serve. So.
Yeah. So I mean, our idea was that we could make these available and minimize the impact to city staff, our investment in time. So really, where we'd be investing our time is really just taking the application. As Tammy mentioned, we have programs like this that we already run, where we, for example, the litter pickup, we provide signs and bags and vests, and then people check them out and check them back in. So it would be a similar process. It would be a check-out, check-in process. The costs of these per unit to replace are about $110 per. And so one of the things that we would like some feedback on from the council is, when we initially presented this, our idea was that the applicant is doing something good for the city and in creating an event that enhances the vibrancy of our downtown. So the idea initially was that maybe we provide these at no cost, and that the city, over time, with these getting loaded in and out of pickups, they're going to need to be replaced. And so that could be a cost that the city could potentially absorb, or we could include a fee that would be accumulated over time to help cover the replacement cost of these. So that's something that we would like some feedback on as far as the direction that you think would be more palatable if it is something you want to pursue.
So currently you do the bags and stuff for garbage pickup. What was the other one?
Banner program, downtown banner.
And we put those up and down.
Right.
I would say you'd probably want to have at least some sort of damage deposit on them when they check them out.
Yeah, and we could include that on the application too.
You're going to have a guy there you're going to take their time, loading. You're not just going to have the folks go load up the barricades themselves. You're going to have somebody on the staff there helping to load them up.
The idea was that they'd set a time for pickup and drop off, and so we would require that they load them up. Yeah, they'd come pick them up. They're actually pretty light. 2 people can load them into a pickup pretty easily. So we'd require them to do the loading, and then when they drop them back off, we would have a check-in process. So then that would require one person to go out and just inspect them as they come back to make sure we got the right number and that the condition is acceptable when they're returned.
Yeah, it would seem to me, like you said, if you had some sort of slush fund that you're developing with the use of them, that some sort of fee, what it might be, I don't know, $1 a piece or something like that. That way, at least you're accumulating some funds to replace them as they do get damaged.
Real quickly, there's an example of what the application may look like here. This is how they interconnect, and so you can kind of see how you can set it up. We'd have enough to do. We could set up, for example, like an event like Art Walk. we could have 5 different applicants that could do a 16-foot by 24-foot enclosure, which is about the size of the gardens that we see. It's a pretty decent-sized beer garden. But if we had one application, for example, a city event that we wanted to do, we could go as large as 24 feet by 176 feet, which is, to put it in perspective, would basically take us from 3rd Street to Friendship Square on Main. And so you could have a pretty large beer garden for an event like an Oktoberfest or something like that somebody wanted to put on.
John, yeah.
I might suggest that the first year out of the chute that we don't put on a monetary renting fee, other than if you break it, you buy it. See how that goes, and then if that works as smoothly, because oftentimes your problems are going to be mostly in the first year. And if we're going to keep our staff participation down to a minimum, first time out of the chute, we're not going to charge anything, but in the future we may, because you're right, they will wear out. Mm-hmm. And it'd be easier on the staff going through the whole process one time without having to worry about 5, 10, 15, whatever there is dollar-wise to maximize efficiency the first time through.
Gary?
I would agree with John. I think get a little time under our belt, see how it works. Their main purpose and the reason they were obtained was as police barricades. So they need to be kept in shape as police barricades. So I guess what I would like to see is to have Tyler and his staff come up with some sort of fee that can be included in the resolution for this upcoming fiscal year 2017, so we could at least accumulate funds to replace and repair if we need to.
And also add to, if they are going to be used as not only for this but as a police barricade or fire or whatever, the more use, the more they're going to wear out. And so, or we may just need more of them. So,
I think another big benefit is that it eliminates any excuse for noncompliance, because then we've provided a mechanism by which people can have compliant barriers. And so then if they opt out and say, you know what, I want to get my own, we can with far more confidence enforce that they need to be compliant, because we provided an easy mechanism for compliance.
yeah.
One point I'd like to bring up, Chair Bowen, is that these are used within the city of Moscow too, and not outside the city. That wasn't discussed, so I just thought I'd bring that up.
Thank you.
And who was that? I didn't get a name or address.
Yeah, and that was the idea. Is that this application would go out with the application for the alcohol permit, so the council would see these applications as they come through. And
So, Gary, I was looking through our resolutions for the other two. Tyler mentioned that, and then maybe it's in the permit itself, that it requires a 48-inch, and these are 44. So, that's where that's at? Is the
Yeah, one of the reasons it's coming to you as a report is because we wanted to see if the council wants to be able to use these barricades, then we will adjust the resolution requirements so that it matches what we've got. So we'll
like
bring
I say,
the
it's
changes back.
not in the resolutions that I could see.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's in our ordinance.
It's in the ordinance, okay.
But it'll come back to you with changes to the ordinance so they can have a smooth transition to being able to use these things.
Is 44 inches, is that kind of the norm? Is that the reason we have
Well, that's how
44?
tall these are.
Pardon me?
That just happens to be how tall these are.
For the crowd control barriers like this, 44 inches is the norm. When we did the research to find the pricing, that's really the norm that we saw in there.
Okay.
Just to also inform you that the last couple resolutions you did, it did say 4 feet. That's actually in the resolution, but that could be changed very easily.
It is in these last two resolutions.
Mm-hmm. That's been the standard 4 feet, but if we go down to 44, that shouldn't be any problem to change it, and we can change that before it goes to council.
And the nice thing about these as well is that, part of the problem when a lot of them have been putting out like a sawhorse or something, where someone can just duck under fairly simply or move it to a side because it's not attached in any way. And so these interconnect, and people aren't going to be, ducking underneath or anything. So they provide a nice visible barrier. And since these events are downtown, aesthetically, this just looks nicer. It looks like a cleaner application. You don't have, random sawhorses and rope and twine and who knows what else to set the thing up.
And we'll be able to put the City Moscow logo on those too.
If we wanted to, we could mark it or, do something with it that way.
Harder to steal.
Yeah.
Well, I know that Art Walk is kind of a crazy event. People.
But, and that's something that we talked about, is potentially putting some on that says courtesy of the city of Moscow or something like that, so the city gets credit for participating and helping out with some of these things.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. Really good that if everything had a uniformity to it,
I think that's the key too.
Would look much better, and I think you get better participation among the people that want to have an event outside if they know they can get these things for free or next to free. I think it's
that's
a
what
good
we
idea.
found is, is a lot of times someone may want to do something, but there are barriers to entry, and if it's like, I don't even know where to get this, I don't know how to do it. The more of those that we can eliminate, we can really make that an easier process for people.
The idea of charging for them, we don't charge to put up the banners on the street and some of these other things, and there's obviously costs associated with that. There's labor costs associated, much less than there would be for this. So I think, at some point, we're going to have to come up with a mechanism to replace them. But if you look at those things, they're going to last quite a number of years.
They're pretty sturdy.
So I think we could institute the program on a free basis to start with. If you'll use these barriers, we'd love to provide them for you, at least for the time being, and see how the program goes. If they get run over a lot and broken, then I suppose we'll have to do something about it. But.
And we'll generate some estimates for a fee that we think would be reasonable for replacement based on what we expect the life cycle to be on these things too.
And let the people know that the charge more than likely is coming, so that 2 years in they say, well, what's this? Well, told you about it last year, and actually,
the only other thing would be, what does everybody else do? Spokane's got a bunch of stuff up for like Hoop Fest and things like that. So
I can call around.
Maybe that's the way. I don't know if Lewiston's got anything similar down there that they put stuff up, but that would be the.
We'll check on some background on that.
That way, you at least got something to fall back on.
Yeah.
Gary?
These would be available not only for those within the public right-of-way, but in the parks as well. So how does the committee want to proceed? Do you want us to prepare the documentation, bring it to council on Monday? Or do you want us to bring it back to committee and then on to council the first meeting in May?
I think it's simple enough that if you could prepare it by Monday, it would be great to see it at council.
There. We
can do that and put it on the regular agenda.
It's done. Chief Duke, do you have comments on this?
You're going to be here for Art Walk.
I'll take the fifth on that.
Okay.
These were purchased in 2002 in a Homeland Security grant to the police department, and the main purpose is to be on standby for incidents for crowd control and disturbance. So my question is, how are we going to set the aside for priorities if these are used a lot in the city and the police need them in an emergency response within 10 to 30 minutes? So that's a question I wanted to bring forward to you on the main purpose of these barricades. That's what we purchased them for, or we received grant funding for them.
I think in that case, you just have it written up that the first priority is for crowd control, and if they're needed, they'll be taken immediately, and some other alternative will have to be used for a beer garden that's already set up. We can handle that.
Yeah.
Well, and it would seem to me if something to that effect arises, we're probably going to be starting to shut down some beer gardens anyway.
We would hope.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that
Right.
point was
Should be part of
clarification
it.
on public safety.
Especially since that's what that's what the grant was for. That's if you can't
Exactly.
get them for it, then somebody's going to be wanting their barricades back.
We'll make sure and include that.
Thank you.
I think it would be possible for us to have, enough construction fence on hand to replace those if they needed to be in an emergency basis, that we could swap that out.
Yeah, we'll add some language that indicates that that's first priority, and if they need to go, they go.
Okay.
Let's
We'll have it
proceed
done.
with that then.
Ready?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, now Jen Piffner is going to give us a report on the Let's Move and the All Stars update.
Where's it? Oh, just 1 second.
Please stand by. There may be technological challenges associated
Just
with
a
this
couple
report.
extra clicks. Maybe. There we go. Okay, now there's a text. There we go. Oop. Okay, I think it's been about a year since we talked about Let's Move. This is a program that the council authorized the city's participation in January of 2012. It went through 2 or 3 iterations for the past few years. Let's Move has been managed by the National League of Cities and is officially the Let's Move Cities and Counties program. So we started off with pillars, if you remember that, from many years ago. We ended up with goals. So the program today has 5 goals, each of which has 3 different achievement levels: bronze, silver, and gold. So when we started in 2012, bring us forward to August of 2015, and by that time we had achieved a gold medal in each of the 5 goal categories. So this is a quick overview of the 5 different goals that we've been working with since that time. We'll go through each one just quickly and share with you how we made those achievements. The reporting mechanism for Let's Move is a standardized survey. So they say, have you done this, 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 and this? You check off what you can, and that's what determines how you achieve the different goals, or achieve the different medals. So starting with goal 1, start early, start smart. This was an interesting goal for us to achieve because although we do provide daycare licensing, we don't provide training. We do require education, but we don't provide that education. So this is really a good example of where we took advantage of a partnership we have with the Public Health District, the Idaho North Central District, and worked with them to host a training program. So the Public Health District would come in and provide the training. It covered the gold requirements that were needed to meet the gold standard there. And then we also promoted that. So by having the training here, having the professionals provide the training while we just host the event, helped us to meet the requirements for these goals. So we use the website, press release, emails out to daycare providers to let them know the training was going on and let them know that we were here to help them meet those needs. Goal 2 was fairly simple. This is one of the things we did right out of the gates, and something actually we look at probably twice a year at least, to make sure that these posters are still in place. We have bronze, silver, and gold requirements depending on the percentage of city-owned facilities that promote the MyPlate or display the MyPlate poster. MyPlate is the new version of the food pyramid kind of thing. So a couple times a year we just go around and make sure that we've got those posters displayed prominently in our 4 venues that sell food or beverages. That's the Herc, the pool, Egan Youth Center, and then City Hall. Goal 3, smart servings for students. This was another good opportunity for a partnership. This is primarily a school district activity in providing breakfast programs and lunch programs for our school-aged kids. What we've done is worked with Mimi Pangili, and actually we just got notice from her this week that she's getting plans in motion for this summer, asking how we can help her again, and we look forward to doing that. We've served as a feeding site at either Egan or Gormley or West Park areas. We've helped with promotion. We've done anything from a proclamation to a press release, social media types things, and have gotten our requirements there up to the gold standard. So I look forward to doing that again and maintaining that. Model food service. This was the one goal that gave us a little bit of trouble and was the last one we wrapped up. We've tried in the past. This one is based on the different foods that we serve in city-owned facilities. So looking at Herc and the pool were the 2 we looked at initially. After giving it some thought, we realized between the meetings we do, the events we host, there's actually a lot more food-related activities that go on in the city. And by looking at the big picture, we were able to to tackle this goal pretty easily. We looked at an inventory or an audit compiled. I put that together, looked at all those meetings and events that we host, what we serve at those meetings, contracts that we have in place with food vendors. That helped us meet our bronze requirement. The silver requirement was to put together a policy for how we can provide healthy and sustainable food choices. And our philosophy was really, it doesn't all have to be carrots and water all the time, but balancing, the sweet treats with a healthy alternative, a fruit or a vegetable, always having water, and approaching it in that way so it's a little more tempered, made good sense for us. So by doing so, we were able to look at that inventory and audit of meetings and places where we do sell food, and we were able to meet the 39% threshold for the food or beverage services that we provide as the city, and we only had to meet a 30% requirement for gold. So that was the tipping point. This was the final goal, as I mentioned, that we achieved. We did that last August, and I'll hit on why that's important here in a moment. Goal 5 actually was something that was completed fairly simply right away as well. This is talking about kids at play spaces within our community, talking about play spaces being mapped. We've had that done with our Parks and Rec Master Plan. Also looking at our silver requirement that an action plan is in place, and of course the Parks and Rec Master Plan fits that very nicely. And then the gold requirement was policies and programs that came from the action plan that are in place to increase access to physical activity. We have many of these things in place, including like the joint use agreement, zoning ordinances, strategies for walking and biking to work. That's another great partnership. Safe Routes to School has been a great agency to work with in putting together those types of things. Multimodal transportation options, revitalizing parks and recreation facilities, increasing number of playgrounds, and then our master plan, which includes provisions to encourage walking and biking. So that one we nailed out of the park from the get-go, which was nice. So that fourth goal was really important. That triggered us to, as one of the communities that had that had achieved gold medals in all 5 goals, we were invited to join First Lady Michelle Obama. This is her initiative to celebrate that achievement and the fact that we have 500 cities that are committed to Let's Move at an event back in D.C. And so Mayor Lambert and City Supervisor Gary Reiner were able to go to that event in September. And it provided not only an opportunity to meet with other communities that are doing some of the good work we are, but they were also able to talk with other Washington, D.C. officials and things like that, which was nice. So, but that also led into the next version of Let's Move, which Kirsten will speak to a bit, called All Stars. And I'll pass the remote over for that.
Good afternoon. So the Let's Move All-Stars program is really just the next step for cities that have completed all of the goals of the Let's Move program to continue to increase healthy lifestyles for our community members. It has 8 different strategies that you can choose. You only need 4 as an all-star candidate. There's bicycle-friendly community, city design guidelines, slow zones, healthy meeting guidelines, business recognition programs, farmers markets, community gardens, and urban agriculture, and breastfeeding policies. As I looked through these, kind of looking to see what we can do, we do a lot of this stuff already. So really what we are doing is seeing what we can do to get the things that are already in our plans for the city to count for these strategies. So we've chosen bicycle-friendly communities, slow zones, business recognition programs, and breastfeeding policies.
No farmers market?
Well, we couldn't do enough new work. All these things have to be new work to qualify within that strategy to use that one.
And
so,
that's
Can't be something that we already have in place.
yes.
Let's Move. We could do things that were already in place. The All Stars program requires some sort of new action.
Okay.
So not necessarily a new decision, but actually completion or implementation. That could count as well, but it has to be new.
Yeah, and something that they really wanted to see with the farmers market was extending it to people that might be of lower income and things like that. And with our partnership with Backyard Harvest, we already do that, and we accept some of those.
We're too good for
food
this
stamps.
already.
It was a little challenging to find 4 that we really could incorporate new work into. So we found a couple things, and we've worked a lot with Deb America and Alita Gaskins of the National League of Cities to kind of see what we can do and what we can get accomplished without creating, a financial burden. So the bicycle-friendly community, Adam Lane, our sustainability intern, has recently submitted an application to be recognized as a bicycle-friendly community. Based on the outcome of that, whether or not we are recognized, we will either, if we are not recognized, see what the next steps are to get that recognition, or there are also different levels that you can achieve within that recognition that we will work towards. Another thing we can do for this is plan a kickoff for our Greenway and really look at advertising on social media and through other venues to get people aware of our Greenway and how to use it safely. The next one are slow zones. So one thing that we already do that is great but will still count is our sidewalk program. And that encourages homeowners or property owners to pay into the sidewalk, or to pay to get new sidewalks if we are already doing construction in that area or anything like that, so that they can get the price at what the city would get to get better sidewalks. And then this is something that we are looking at promoting more so we can get more of these sidewalks redone. And then we are also looking at incorporating open streets events. So as we improve some of our streets and sidewalks, before we open them, we can have like a little, miniature block parties where, it's closed down and kids can come out and have like sidewalk chalk, competitions and things like that that can really not only promote that we have these new great usable streets, but also we can hand out ways that you can, safely walk to school, different things you can use these streets and sidewalks to encourage healthy lifestyles. Next one is the business recognition program. So the city was involved in the health and wellness fair, and one thing that we thought we could do is really just work in the next couple of years to encourage local business participation in that. It was something that, people who attended really enjoyed, and there was a lot of people there, but we want to get more members of the community there and more businesses to participate. Another thing is the Flip Moscow that we have already. It's the Fitness Lifestyle Improvement Program. We are looking at maybe extending that citywide to incorporate businesses. So businesses can participate, and, we can do it based on, average steps taken per employee for the business, or something that's a way to incentivize local businesses to really think mindful and be mindful about living and representing healthy lifestyles for our city. Finally, we have our breastfeeding policy. The city doesn't have in our HR policies a breastfeeding policy. We haven't had any problems with anyone that needed to use or do that as far as city employees, but something we can do is kind of designate an area in every city building that if there's an employee that wishes to do this or needs this service, that they can have a safe and comfortable place that isn't the bathroom to do this. And then also just make sure that employees know that we are welcoming to these activities. And like I said, Jen and I talked, it's not something that we don't encourage in any ways. It's just something that every facility can be ready and have a good place for someone to do it.
We don't discourage it in any way.
No.
But we don't. There hasn't really been that big of demand that.
Only a couple of new kiddos in the city over the last few years, but yeah.
It's just something we can look to incorporate in the future, just depending on the makeup of our employees.
Right.
All right. So, like I said, Deb America with Public Health Idaho has been a lot of help, and Aaliyah Smith-Parker-Gaskins from the National League of Cities is helping us. The reporting for this, we just kind of update what we are doing quarterly to Aaliyah Gaskins, and she kind of just helps guide us in the right direction and gives us new ideas and resources.
So a lot of these things, like you saw, there's programs that you see that we have in place. It's just further promotion and implementation and saying, okay, for instance, curb drops. Those are some things we plan to do by actually installing the curb drops. That's something that we can add to this All-Stars list and get credit for. So looking at the balance of promotion and education and just being a resource, not necessarily requirements of citizens to do things. So that's kind of the goal. Same philosophy we had with Let's Move, but carrying that forward into the All-Stars goals.
And what's the bottom line financially on this? If we achieve all these goals, do we get some kind of grant for this? Or?
We hear a lot about different grant opportunities that come up because of Let's Move and All-Stars. We've seen a couple over the years, and I don't think there's anything that we've gone after to date. But that's the underlying foundation here, is that we keep hearing there will be things that we can do. So it's why we want to be mindful and make sure that we're participating at a responsible level. As Kirsten mentioned, bringing on significant financial impacts or anything like that isn't the goal, but to just kind of have our ducks in a row so if an opportunity arises, we're ready to take advantage of it.
And I believe we're, one of 30
of All-Stars. I think you're right.
In the All-Stars program so far, so there's not a lot of us. But
that's nationwide?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that's pretty significant then. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And if we could get enough funding because of this to fill in the 56 miles of missing sidewalks around the city, that would be great.
There you go.
All right.
Any questions? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, the next report on our agenda here is the Idaho Vibha update. I assume that's let's see if I remember right, that's the Very Excellent Benefit Association or something like that.
Yeah, some acronym like that. As you know, the city has a Vibha program, Voluntary Employee Benefit, I believe it is allotment or assessment, whatever. At least it's a benefit that is utilized provided by the city to employees. It's currently at $250 per year. It allows employees to accumulate pre-tax funds in what amounts to an account for the employee himself or herself that they can utilize to offset costs of medical care, deductibles, that sort of thing immediately, or they can let it sit and accumulate and utilize it for health care expenses in the future. It'll be eventually a cornerstone, I believe, of where we're going to go with our health insurance and employee benefits in the future. You can use Vibha for a way to mitigate the high costs of insurance, at least to some extent, by encouraging employees to, since the money that they would spend on their health care would be their own, that you'd encourage greater, selection in utilizing health care benefits. At any rate, our current Vibha program is administered through a firm in the state of Washington. From the very beginning, you heard from Chad Murray of JH Benefits, who was here a few weeks ago, talking about wanting to form an Idaho Association Vibha administration company so that we could utilize an Idaho company to manage our Vibha funds. We've gotten good service out of the Washington program. However, it is made up of some very large organizations, and Idaho entities don't have any sort of independent voice on their boards. So in order to be more, listen a little more to Idaho voices, having an Idaho firm would be preferred if you can get the same level of service. The program, the draft documents that were provided us have been reviewed by our city attorney, who's been in contact with JH Benefits attorney as well. Currently going back and forth, looking at some changes they've made, trying to see if it is the same or at least close to the same benefits in the program that we have now. So just wanted to keep the council or the committee abreast of what is going on. Since you haven't seen this thing in a couple of weeks, it's still milling out there. We're just awaiting final submission of the amended documents.
Thank you very much for the update, Gary. If anybody else in the audience has anything else to add to this meeting, please come forward now. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Consider yourself entertained.
Secondly, entertained.
Adjourn.